In this video, we're going to talk about how you, as a piano player, can play straight ahead blues versus jazz blues. Now, this is a follow-up to a popular video on our channel, What's the Difference Between Jazz and Blues? I thought it might be a good idea to discuss it from the piano player's standpoint of view. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you 12-bar blues in straight ahead blues style with proper blues changes, and then I'm going to play the jazz version with proper jazz changes. So if you take a look at the piece of music here, this is going to be blues in G major. And essentially it's just 12 bars, and I'm going to play it for you, then we're going to come back and discuss it. Let's get going. Okay, so quickly what you'll notice about blues in G major, this straight ahead, is the bass player is playing a very straight ahead bass part. It's like boom, da da, and he continues that, etc., throughout the entire thing. And when we get to the jazz version, you're going to see a big difference between this and that. The other thing is the changes. So you've essentially got 4 bars of G7, 2 bars of C7, 2 bars of G7, then it goes 1 bar of 5, 1 bar of 4, so D to C, and then the rest is G7, and then there's this bass line that walks its way down from D. And so typically as a piano player, what you're going to be doing is simple little patterns, and you don't want to go beyond force. So a lot of times with jazz, you have chordal voicings like this, whereas in the straight ahead blues, you have very simple voicings like 1, 3, 5, and then up to flat 7. Okay, that's typically what you would do. Now, you want to stay away from advanced voicings. I can tell you right now that if you go in there as a jazz player on a blues gig and you start playing these, they're not going to dig that very much. In fact, they won't really know what that is. So stick to simple 7th chords. So G7 would be this, C7 would be this, then D7. Back to G7. Okay, so don't stray too far beyond that. That's pretty much the way blues players handle it. Okay, now let's take a look at the jazz part. So the jazz blues is going to be very different. First of all, it's swing. It's going to be a little more up-tempo and a lot more changes. Let's take a look at the lead sheet that I've written for you. I'm going to play a tune called Billy's Bounce by Charlie Parker. So you'll notice right away, heck of a lot more notes. There's a bass that follows along with the melody as well, and then the bass gets into a walking bass line eventually when you get into the solos. So you'll notice in the straight ahead blues, the bass player is going, That's not what they're going to be doing in this. The bass player is like, and in this particular case, we're in F, whereas a lot of blues players want to play in sharp keys like G major, A major, D major, and even E major. Jazz players tend to stick to flat keys, F, B flat, even C, E flat, A flat, and it tends to fall underneath the fingers for jazz a little bit better. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Billy's Bounce for you, and then we're going to come back and talk about some of the differences between this and the blues. Let's get going with that. So you'll notice right away the biggest difference between the jazz blues version and the straight ahead blues version is there's a lot more notes. It's definitely swing, whereas jazz is straight ahead, even eighth notes. This is swing eighth notes where you've got scales that are, whereas straight ahead is. Okay, so there are some similarities in that the basic chord changes are there, but in jazz, you've got more of them. So let's talk about the chord changes here a little bit. Okay, so in blues, you had 4 bars of G7. We've got a bar of F7, a bar of B flat, then 2 bars of F7. You might even throw some other voicings in there. Chordal voicings, and really the sky's the limit with jazz. Then you've got a bar of B flat 7, a bar of B diminished 7, then to F7, then a 2-5. This is 2-5 of 2, and this is also 2-5 of 1. So A minor 7 flat 5 to D7 flat 5 to G7, G minor 7 to C7 to F7. And then a turnaround is 1-6-2-5. This is your turnaround here to get back to the top. 1, 6, 2, and 5. Okay, so in Billy's Bounce, obviously a lot more notes for the melody as well. And in jazz, you'll find a lot of times with melodies like this, the bass player will follow along. And that's what we did in the recording. The bass player was playing the melody along with the piano. And then eventually the bass player started walking the bass while the piano player continued on with the melody. In fact, what I do remember from the recording is that the bass player, during the section where the piano player is continuing with the melody, they're playing sort of in halftime like this. So playing like half notes, a few eighth notes here and there. And then eventually when you get into the solo part, which is here, the bass player is starting to walk the bass line. So you'll find a lot of different things that bass players do during blues, jazz blues. So straight ahead blues, bass players basically always playing the same thing, even eighth notes, even quarter notes. But in the jazz blues version, the bass player kind of stretches from there, plays halftime, plays walking bass, plays the melody. So the bass player is really freed up to do and interpret it however they feel or however the arrangement goes, depending on who the leader is. The other thing that I wanted to point out about the jazz version is that when we get down to the solo section, you'll notice that the drummer and the bass player are there really to keep time, and they're supporting the piano player. So as a piano player, you're free to do lots of soloing. And of course, the bass player is, playing walking bass line. So there's a lot of differences between jazz and blues, but for the piano player, try to take a slice off some of the things that we're doing. Obviously, the jazz version gives you a lot more freedom to do things, whereas in blues, you really want to stick to the simple chords, the simple dominant seventh chords, and just kind of find your way through. I mean, obviously, you can do some improvising. That's really what blues is as well. Both of them are improvised musics. But there are a lot of limitations to the blues side versus the jazz side. I hope you got a lot out of this. It is definitely a follow-up to our previous video, which is what's the difference between blues and jazz, and this was really for piano players. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about it, please put them in the comments below. And if you think you have a topic for maybe blues or jazz and you want to discuss that, put that also in the comments. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to the channel. We could use a few more new subscribers. That'd be awesome. My name is Paul Tobey. Thanks for your time.